Hey guys, welcome back to Growing Our Homestead. Today I'm going to go over Greenstalk planters, what I know, what I've learned, and what I've read about, and just kind of get that information out there easy for you guys to find. Welcome back. Okay, so Greenstalk planters, you can get them online, greenstalks.com, I think it is. I do not have a promo code at this point, but I have found that I'm really a huge fan of them. Every so often you can catch them on sale, and they're pretty affordable for what they really are. The plastic itself is made very, very durably, and it gives you a lot of space to grow if you're in a semi-permanent situation, say you're in a rental or you're in a house that you know you're going to turn around and sell and you just don't really want to be digging up the yard or making big beds out on the yard. The Greenstalks offer a great option, and I decided that I would go over what I know about them and what all options of things that you could really grow in these and grow well. And just kind of get it on an easy platform out there for you guys. So the first thing that I learned about Greenstalks is that you want to make sure that you buy potting soil for them and not garden soil, because they are not going to be receiving any nutrients from the ground at all. When you do like a raised garden bed, typically some of the nutrients from the ground can come up in, or the roots from the deep-rooted plants can go deep enough to receive nutrients from the ground itself. With Greenstalks, that's not an option, so you are kind of stuck with only getting a potting soil mix. I will say this, make sure that if you're going to grow anything that you're going to eat, that you get a vegetable safe potting mix, at least a vegetable safe potting mix. If not, if you can find an organic potting mix, that's really best. I found that they are a little bit more expensive, but for me, the peace of mind knowing that my food is not growing in chemicals really does pay off. So I wanted to go over a list of things that you can grow in your Greenstalk. Personally, at this moment, I have the top 3 of these growing in my Greenstalk. Several of these other ones I plan on growing in them this year once my cold weather crop is done being harvested. First and foremost is strawberries. Strawberries grow really, really well in the Greenstalk just because the fruit will actually come out of the top of the Greenstalk and hang. You guys will watch me harvest some of them. I actually have an entire Greenstalk, a 5-layer Greenstalk, the leaf version, which we'll go over in a minute, but essentially it means it's lower capacity on soil. So you have to put shallow rooted things in them. I went with strawberries. You're going to watch me harvest an entire 5-layer tier, and I think that each layer has 6 pockets in it, so that's how many strawberry plants that we've got growing right now. They haven't come up yet because it is kind of still chilly around here, but they will be a great crop that's going to come out of that, and I think we're going to get a lot of strawberries. The second thing that's on my list is lettuces. I actually have about half of one filled up with lettuce right now, just seeing how it really does. Just a salad mix lettuce that I had gotten from MY Gardeners, so nothing specific growing in them, but they are actually growing really, really well. You could also do like obviously any kind of spinaches or greens, like if you like collard greens or turnip greens or mustard greens, all of those things would grow very, very well if they've got a loose green. I don't think that they would do really well with cabbages or like an iceberg lettuce. I think that you would struggle with that. What I am curious to see is if anybody, if you see this and you have experience growing broccoli or cauliflower in a Greenstalk planter, I would love to hear your comments about how that went. So I also have carrots growing. Now, you could do the carrots in the leaf style, the smaller capacity, if you wanted to, but you would have to buy carrots that were made and designed to stay very short. I have carrots growing in my original size planter, so the The leaf size, I think the pockets are about this big, maybe 6 inches deep or so. On the original, they're about 10 inches deep. So you could definitely do a really good sized carrot in that deeper one of the original size. Now I will be growing bush beans, dry beans, pepper plants of all shapes and sizes, and eggplants in these this year. I think that they're all going to do very, very great. I'm pretty excited to get them growing in there, just because, like, my thing with bush beans and dry beans, especially those two things, they take up a lot of ground space, and I don't have a lot of ground space, so I try to stay as productive for each square foot that I do have. And the thing with those bush beans and dry beans and stuff like that is you're using a lot of space to grow the plant, and it doesn't grow very tall. So then it just only produces so many beans. And I've just never found the value in growing them when they take up so much space. Especially dry beans are super cheap at the store. The reason I'm doing it this year, because I had a special request from a family member to grow a specific kind of bean that she had when she was younger. And so I'm going to do it for that. And then I found, I think it's one of my purple potted beans that are not pole beans. They are bush beans. And I really, really wanted to grow them. So I went ahead and said, I will just do a Greenstalk with them. The eggplants and the peppers, those plants don't get extremely large in my area. I'm in zone 7A. So they are absolutely an annual, and they don't have a lot of time to grow. So the yield from my pepper plants is going to be lower. And that goes back to the same thing as I was saying before with the bush beans. It doesn't feel justified to truly use up that amount of space in the actual square footage gardens that I have to put in there some things like peppers and eggplants and bush beans and those type things that aren't going to really produce a lot for the amount of space that they're taking up. Another thing that would be really, really good in them is determinate tomatoes. I currently do not have the ability to preserve tomatoes. I don't have the space, neither in freezer space or canning or anything like that. So anything that I get this year is really gonna be fresh use or give it to family. Next year we have our house on order, so we will be into our house probably by August, September, and if that's the case, I may have some room to do some preserving. I will have freezer space by next year when the garden's growing. I will have the ability to can by next year and storage space for all of that. So next year will be a different sale, but determinate tomatoes, all of their fruit ripens at the same time. So for me, a determinate tomato this year just didn't really make sense. Determinate tomatoes are excellent for small space because they don't get very big. The vining tomatoes that you see get super, super large. Those are actually indeterminate tomatoes. They just keep growing and growing. Determinate tomatoes, that seed already knows how big it's going to get. And with that, it has an idea of, it knows how many fruits it's going to produce. But the bush grows, it sets all of its flowers, it sets all of its fruits, and then all of its fruits become ripe. So that's excellent if you're going to be preserving. If you're going to do canning and you want to make sauces, that's amazing. That's exactly what you're looking for. But for me, in my current situation, they don't work. But determinate tomatoes, I think, would be excellent in a Greenstalk planter. Just because as long as you pruned the bottom and took a lot of the leafy parts off, of course you want to be very careful with pruning a determinate tomato, but I will go over that. I have another video planned where I'm going to talk about tomatoes, determinate versus indeterminate, and the pros and cons with those. But if you prune just the leafy pieces off the bottom end of that tomato, it's still going to get plenty of air. It's up in the air on the side of the green stalk, so the wind is just going to be blowing around it. I think that determinate tomatoes would do amazing in Greenstalk planters. And if anybody's going to give that a try or has before and wants to leave me a little note, please do, because I think that those would do really awesome. Of course, beautiful flowers. If you have trailing flowers, like a trailing petunia or maybe some phlox, or even if you wanted to do something that was a little bit more permanent and you did some like ivy, that would just be gorgeous. Or even a clematis, you could plant a clematis at the bottom, or several different colors of clematis at the bottom and then let it just grow up and trim it back every year. I think that that would be gorgeous in it as well. Ground cherries. If you have never heard of or never tasted ground cherries, I implore you, find a started plant. Last year I did find some started plants at our local feed store. They came from the big box company. Everybody knows the company that Lowe's has and Home Depot has. They had ground cherries last year. Now, I only ever found them at that feed store, and there was only a few plants. But may the odds be ever in your favor, I think you can find some, and I implore you to try them. They're a little tricky to start from seed. I'm trying to start some from seed this year, and I've had some mediocre germination, but I will say my seeds are older this year, or the ones that I started before that are now germinating, they are older. They're 3 years old or something like that. So that might be why I'm having some germination issues. I've got another one planted, a type called Chinese lantern, and they do different colors. They do pinks and yellows and greens as they're becoming ripe, and they even turn red when they are ripe. So those ones I'm excited to see. They got planted about a week ago, but ground cherries take about 3 weeks before they germinate. So find them, try them. They are a husk berry, kind of like a tomatillo, but they're small, about this big, and they are deliciously sweet. You think that you have a berry. You could definitely do turnips in your green stalk. You could do radishes in your green stalks. And obviously the greens that go with those you could easily do. Cucamelons, if nobody's heard of cucamelons, please give those a try. They are about this big around. They look like a watermelon. They taste like a cucumber with a hint of citrus on them, and you put them in your mouth and they pop open, and they've got tiny little itty bitty seeds in them, but they are very, very good. I've heard you can pickle them. I have not pickled them. My kids eat them raw before I can ever do anything with them. They've got them off the bush and they're eating them. But they are vining. The Greenstalk has an option where you can get these supports that come that you set in between the trays. If you got those, the cucamelons would be really awesome, because they would just hang off the edge of that tray, those support trays, and you could just pull them right off. They're not super heavy. That's why I think that they would be excellent for this. Any small personal melons. If you had your Greenstalk on a really sturdy, say you have it on a concrete slab or on a porch somewhere, right? You could do any small personal melons with those supports that you can order from Greenstalk. Or if you had your own idea of how you wanted to do a support for it, you absolutely could. I would recommend that when your melons start acting like they're going to get ripe, you can either take a pantyhose and tie it to the support and just put it up underneath the melon, or you can get produce bags. So if you've ever bought like oranges in a bag, they come in that red like mesh fabric. You can actually order that off of Amazon, and you could use those to hold it up as well. And the red mesh fabric, if you order it off of Amazon, is much more cost effective than buying pantyhose at the Dollar Tree. So keep that in mind as well. You could do any kind of small cucumbers. I would not recommend doing very large cucumbers, just because the supports that come from Greenstalk are not meant to hold a lot of weight. So like, don't grow a full-size watermelon on them. Don't grow an Armenian white cucumber that, you know, gets 2 foot long and very heavy. But you could definitely do small cucumbers on it as well. You could easily do pole beans if you had that support that comes from Greenstalk. Any pole beans would be happy to grow on that. And you could do indeterminate tomatoes. Now, I will say I don't think that the supports that come from Greenstalk are probably going to be strong enough to hold up some large tomatoes. But if you did an indeterminate, like say a Sweet 100, which are little cherries, and they have very, very long tusks that they fill with just hundreds and hundreds of sweet tomatoes. They are delicious. You could definitely do that in the Greenstalk with the supports that come. Now, if you want to do a bigger tomato out of the Greenstalk, I would recommend doing the indeterminate tomato somewhere lower, just so that the center of gravity is higher. Or you could do it at the top. Now that I think about that, you could definitely do it at the top and have it trail down, and then you would still be getting the air to the plant that you need. But I would look into different types of supports for that. Okay, so those are the list. It's not all inclusive. Obviously, there's probably so much more that you could definitely do in the Greenstalks, but that is the list of plants that I think would do great in the Greenstalk. If you have any other ideas, please take a moment to comment down below. Okay, so I wanted to give you some tips. This video is getting kind of lengthy, so I'm going to hurry up and get it done really quickly. On the very top tray, that's how you're going to water your Greenstalks. You're going to fill it up. Each line on the Greenstalk marks which layer in it that it is going to water. So if you go to the very bottom line on your top water filler, you will water the first layer. And the second line is the second layer down. And the third line is the third layer down. If you fill it all the way up, you should potentially be filling the entire, or watering the entire 5 layers. Now, filling it up once works if you have stayed on top of watering. If for some reason, say you've left it sit and it's getting dried out, then you totally need to count on watering it, filling that up several times just to get the water good and soaked. When you're putting it together, you want to take one tier out. Now, if you're gonna have a spinner underneath it, or if you got the base that has the wheels, anything like that, you wanna make sure that you put that down first. But then you're going to take your first layer of the Greenstalk, you're gonna set it down. You're gonna fill it with your soil. You're gonna fill it all the way to the top. There's little lines on the outside and you'll see where they are. It doesn't matter if you get it in the hole in the middle, just kind of knock it out. You know, just spread it around, make sure it's good. You don't want to tamp it down too much, but you definitely want to make sure that it's full. Then they have smaller layers they're just water catchers, but you set it down on top of the center. There's a centerpiece with a stake sticking out. You're going to set that down over top. It fits perfectly on there. Then you're going to take another layer and you're going to set it down on top of that. Now you need to make sure that the corners match up perfectly. It's supposed to be like, so if this is the hole in between the 2 bottom planters, your next tier up is going to have a planter here and a planter here. So they're supposed to kind of work around each other like a puzzle piece. And then you're just going to fill it up with soil and you're going to continue stacking it the whole way up. Now, when you get to your last one, if you're like me and you are like, wow, this bag of soil is getting really heavy, you can fill it up on the ground and then lift that last one up, and that may be easier instead of having to try to jerk and shake the soil from the top and taking the chance of spilling soil everywhere and all of that stuff. Don't rely on rain alone to water your Greenstalks. It probably won't, unless you have days of rain. Because of the way the trickle system works in the Greenstalk, the center of the soil is where most of the water is being held. That's where all your roots are going to kind of mingle in the middle underneath those watering discs. So with that, you have to make sure that you are going and filling that up. Now, of course, you don't want to make your soil overly moist. I just wanted to make a point to you that just because it rained last week does not mean that your soil in your Greenstalk is still significantly moist. It is not the ground. It is a container. Keep that in mind. So if you are going to do the tomatoes or anything deep-rooted, carrots, stuff like that, that goes deep down in the soil, you definitely want to make sure that you get the original size, not the leaf size. Now, that's not going to make sense to anybody that's not looked at the website, but the leaf size has short cut-off buckets that you plant in, the little pockets. If you get the regular, it's more like a pie. It's very pointed at the bottom and not cut off. Those are much deeper and they work well for deep-rooted things. Radishes or turnips or carrots. Radishes wouldn't be so bad if you were doing like the English breakfast radish. I think that's the one that's long and oval, kind of like a carrot. You would want the original size. If you are looking to save money and you don't care about growing tomatoes or radishes or carrots or any of that in there, I do suggest going with the leaf planter. It is shorter if you buy the same amount of tiers, but you can buy a 7-tier and make it just as tall as the 5-tier original. But it saves you significantly on soil costs. Anything shallow rooted will do just fine in there. And then, yes, make sure that if you are unable to move it, or if you plan on having to spin it, maybe the sun only comes in on one side for most of the day and you need to be able to spin it or roll it around, move it out of the way, make sure that you look at getting their stands. Well, I think that's about it. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe. Please leave a comment. Please hit the like button. Please tell all your friends about the channel. We really appreciate it very much. My kids especially are loving this. They think it's the coolest thing ever that Mom's on YouTube. So if you guys could just spread it around as much as you can. If you have any questions, you're welcome to find me. I am on Instagram as well, Growing Our Homestead. Have a bit more of a following over there than I do on YouTube, but it's a lot easier to post on Instagram every day when you work 40 hours a week than it is to post an entire video. But I appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I hope that your cup runneth over.